That is the prettiest skybox I have ever seen. Genuinely, I have seen a lot of skyboxes in my day, and this one takes the cake. But there's a secret to this skybox, a secret seeped deep into the Apex map that it encompasses. And to understand that secret, we first have to learn about the map itself. Hi, I'm Birdman number 389, and I'm here to talk about irrelevant and frankly boring details on Apex Legends maps. Ones that you probably don't care about, but you'll watch anyway because of that fun little hook I put at the start of the video, tricking you to watch until the end. Wait, stop, don't go! Previously, we explored the maps of King's Canyon and World's Edge, and to continue down that line, we'll hop on to the next map released in Apex, Olympus, the City of Dreams, as touted by the billionaire creator of the floating megastructure Lillian Peck. This city in the clouds was, at one point in its life, the hub of science and progress in the Outlands, housing and supporting the lives of the researchers and scientists who went on to produce some of the greatest innovations seen in the past century. Olympus as a map references heavily the myths of Greek mythology, usually to paint the image of the city being an idyllic paradise. The map itself references the name of the home of the gods atop Mountain Olympus, with other names like Arcadia and Elysium being used for different regions. It also sprinkles in a few references to show its place above the world, the research buildings being named Nimbus and Stratus to relate them to the clouds surrounding them. That goes alongside the far cleaner nature of the map, with luscious greens, pinks, and whites throughout. Compared to the far dirtier and busier designs of other Apex maps, it all creates this idea of living in a perfect utopia in the clouds. But we're playing Apex, and you can't have an Apex map without a catastrophic event that caused the collapse of the region. So what happened here? Damn, that's one giant meatball. The arguable crowning achievement of the researchers and scientists that resided on Olympus was the Phase Runner, the belt that cuts through the entire map and acts as a transportation hub for the city. Now, the phase technology used here is a long-time part of the Titanfall world, and largely one that had been hard to control. The only characters seen capable of using phase shifts in the past were simulacrum pilots and Ronin Titans, aka not human, and a human in a big robot suit. It wouldn't be until much later when Wraith became capable of creating phase portals and shifting between them, and that only took terrible human experiments to make someone who could phase shift. Surely that won't have any consequences. So phase shifting has been a difficult technology to use in the universe for decades, and the Phase Runner is a major evolution of that technology. The first ever system for humans and objects to safely shift between dimensions. It's one of the greatest creations made by the men and women of the Outlands, capable of bridging the gap between worlds, opening the doors to opportunities never seen before. And then it blew up. Honestly, the explosion wasn't even that bad. You can still use it. Ah! There's actually a far greater story to tell here at the Rift, the center of a massive collapse of the Phase Runner. And this is, in fact, the first of 3 stories we can find on Olympus. A story of a mother who lost her child in pursuit of salvation, a mercenary who would become broken from her own mistakes, and the Mervin who saved the Outlands. But I'm not going to tell you that story. What? Unlike a lot of stories in Apex, this one actually has quite a few cinematics surrounding it, and I'd honestly be doing it a disservice to paraphrase them. So instead, I made a link with all the cinematics in order, so if you want to check out the whole thing, you can do so right now. But for the sake of the video, I will try to condense it into a single run-on sentence. Okay? Here we go. Energy crisis causes 2 scientists to enter a black hole for a new power source, Branthium. One scientist strands the other to steal the Branthium, but a Mervin and the rest of the scientists stop her from taking the power source for herself by sending it through the Phase Runner and blowing up the site to keep them from following it, making the bad scientist turn into a crazed simulacrum for her injuries, and Olympus abandoned after the collapse, where it would later become an Apex battleground when the scientist stranded in the black hole escapes and joins the Apex games. Unlike a military abandoned from a lost war or a colony lost to corporate neglect, Olympus's collapse is a story of triumph and progress in the Outlands, and the Rift is a monument to their success. Now that we have seen such a touching moment of heroism, let's touch some grass. We're now walking through the center of the map that surrounds the primary research center of Olympus, Hammond Labs, and as I walk through these green fields, you may notice that every single part of this entire map is kind of fake. The entire ground is built out of giant panels fitted together to create the image of green fields. All the slopes and hills across this terrain were made too to make it feel more natural. It reminds me a lot of the panel room systems in the Portal games or the dynamic testing facility we see in the 4th mission in Titanfall 2. But unlike those facilities, Olympus is pretty open about its own facade. You can see the seams between every panel, every blade of grass is perfectly cut, the paths you walk are smooth and clean. It's not really trying to trick you into believing that everything is real. It's more just adding a nice coat of paint over the giant ship you are floating on. And nothing is more evident of that than the mountain at the center of the map. This mountain is a decorative piece to cover up the central turbine that helps keep the city afloat. Yes, before you ask, this floating city is held up by large turbines and even larger balloons. It was truly built for research, relaxation, and going around the world in 80 days. But one thing you may notice is that you can only see this mountain covering from one side, and the other half is left completely bare. And that's because of what happened after the Phase Runner meltdown we talked about earlier. See, after the collapse of the Phase Runner, the researchers and scientists of Olympus abandoned the city, and later it came under new management. Who were the new owners, exactly? Rich people.
Hello, rich people?
What once was a pillar of science and innovation on the planet of Samoth was now the premier vacation destination for the elite and wealthy of the Outlands, with luxury destinations like Bonsai Plaza and Oasis to stay in during your time on Olympus. Fun fact, the central hub of Bonsai Plaza is actually where Loba's parents are killed by Revenant. So really, anytime you jump out of this window as Loba, it's like she's really connecting with her father. Too much? Over at Oasis, we have these 2 massive skyscrapers that are both apartments for the residents of the city, but not as many as you'd think. If you check inside, you can see the mailboxes behind the reception desk, and there are exactly 6 mailboxes. Yeah, there are 12 residences between these 2 towers. Just 12. And I really wish I could see what their apartments look like because that's like 2 penthouses per person. How rich are they? But you wanna know a secret? These apartments are actually considered the low-end property available here on Olympus. Why is that? Well, let's look back at that mountain, and you'll notice that Oasis is not on the mountainside. See, the mountain specifically covers only one half of Turbine, because the residents of the south end of Olympus didn't want to be reminded of the heavy industrial quarter that makes up the northwest end of the city. So the fake mountain on Turbine was constructed to hide it from their residents, and make the property south of the center more desirable. And Oasis sits on the bad side of that mountain. Yeah, that 12 resident apartment complex with an exclusive undersea themed cafe and private gallery is considered the poor residences of Olympus. So what are the premier, high-end properties of Olympus really like? We can find that out by stepping into the neighborhoods of gardens and estates. Each features a full layout of minimalist housing in a tight-knit community. And if you just had a shiver down your spine looking at these houses, then you just had the same reaction I did. First things first.
Where's the door hole?
Some of these buildings have actual doors, but only on one side, and the rest only have sliding glass panes for their doorways. Everyone in the neighborhood can see into each other's houses at all times. Now, I will give the benefit of the doubt and say that this could be smart glass that can turn opaque when you want privacy, but I'm not too sure I would trust privacy that could go away with a single short circuit. That's without mentioning that some of these houses have completely open windows. No glass, no curtains, nothing. I seriously hope the guy next door doesn't snore because you aren't avoiding it in these places. And let's not forget that open layout. So spacious with everything pushed up against the wall. Why, you can have your toilet right next to your refrigerator in case you've been going at it for too long and need a refill. Actually, let's take a closer look at that toilet. Ew. I'd rather shit in the glorified porta potties on World's Edge. Seriously, what is that? And in fact, what is this entire bathroom? It's completely open. You're telling me this curtain is meant to stop people from seeing inside? I'm sorry, if I took a shower behind this fabric, I'd have to age restrict this video. Frankly, I don't even know if these sets of houses are meant to be a single property or if people literally live on top of each other. I hope it's the former because we know for a fact families lived in these neighborhoods. Loba, Lifeline, and Octane all lived on Olympus during its time as a luxury resort. Loba because of... yeah. But Lifeline and Octane lived there as kids well before it became part of the Apex games. One of the loading screen transitions for Gardens retells a memory of Lifeline baking cookies with her father. And you can find the grave of Octane's pet rabbit Navi on one of the elevated grass patches in Estates. Please hold for a side tangent. Navi in particular actually has some interesting lore, as Octane's beloved pet, Navi, would be there for every crazy stunt Octane pulled off as a kid, unflinching no matter what the danger. Navi would pass away quietly one night as they slept, but Octane, seeing that death as boring, told everyone that Navi died crashing a rocket into a planet, an explosive send-off for his dear friend. Thank you to former narrative designer Tom Casiello for giving us that tale. Now I'm gonna go cry. But what this all means is that we know for a fact both Lifeline and Octane lived in these houses when they were children, using these bathrooms, living behind these glass panes. And I'm not going to unpack that for you, I'm just gonna let you stew on those thoughts. Now, Olympus was this premier destination for quite some time, but the instability of the rift eventually caused the residents of the city to abandon it once again for their own safety. And that's when the Apex Games, with the help of an old simulacrum, became the owners of the city and brought the Legends onto the map to compete. So what was left in the city when the Legends came to the scene? Well, most if not all of the infrastructure of Olympus was still fully functional even after being abandoned twice. The automated systems made by the original engineers and researchers function even over a century after their creation. And the industrial sector that Mountain was shunning is part of why. Surprisingly, a majority of the power generated on Olympus is solar energy, run at the locations of Power Grid and Solar Array. These are the only locations visible to us that generate any form of power, and do it with an oddly small amount of solar panels too. I really wonder how much power these two panels generate here. Really great placement from the engineers. But hey, apparently it works because not only is the entire city still functioning, but also the Phase Runner, which requires a massive amount of batteries to sustain. You can go inside of Terminal and see the maintenance and systems that keep it running, and you'll find batteries connected here everywhere you look. And all those batteries are packaged and sent here from the nearby energy depot, where the power generated from Solar Array and Power Grid is sent to be prepared for use all across the city. And this is all surprisingly automated. There are buildings and spaces for workers to use when doing maintenance or checkups, but largely this system doesn't need people involved in it to function, as it did for decades between different owners. So what on Olympus did need people running it? My best guess would be the docks, the corner of the map where ships would land to deliver cargo for the residents of Olympus. There are tons of small cargo ships docked all across the area, the central refueling station that the dock workers would be based out of. The giant fuel canister at the center is actually marked with the name Dionysus, the Greek god mostly known for his preference of wine. Yes, they are calling their ionized fuel wine for the gods. And I call it ionized fuel because you'll notice that the ion in Dionysus is highlighted. You know, they may be a bit pretentious, but I do appreciate good wordplay. Having fuel fit for a god pairs well with the supercarrier docked here on Olympus, Arcadia, the largest cargo and transport ship used for the city. From the inside, it practically is a warehouse built into the ship, with automated arms on tracks to organize and move the crates and cargo between sections. The Arcadia is cool not just for the setup inside of it, but also where it's placed. You may notice on the map that the supercarrier is docked within the city, not on the outside, meaning Olympus was specifically designed with these spaces in mind for a supercarrier like this to dock into. And other areas of the map can be rebuilt with those panels we were talking about earlier to fit other ships and carriers as well. In fact, one of the first major updates to the map did that exact thing, remodeling a portion of the city to fit a new supercarrier, the Icarus. And it, oh my god, what the hell is that? I think it's finally time we get to story 2 of Olympus, the Outbreak. At the end of the last story, a ceremony was held in celebration of Pathfinder and the scientists behind the safe delivery of the Branthium power source. This was a rare occasion where Olympus was opened up to the public to take part in the ceremony, and it was also the day that a new fleet of ships were docked into the city. A group of scavenger ships had just returned to the Outlands from the planet of Typhon, and mysteriously gained clearance to dock on Olympus. The flagship of the scavengers, the Icarus, was carrying a unique plant native to Typhon called Medusa vines. But what the scavengers didn't know was that the Medusa vines weren't just a simple plant. Rather, they were the mutated bioweapon created by the IMC's Ares division, made to spread indestructible vines across a target area and produce a viral infection known as the Legacy Antigen. And when the Icarus made landfall on Olympus, its vines spread out onto the city itself. With the Legacy Antigen now infecting the visitors and even some of the competitors, the Legends had 3 days to find a cure. Eventually, they found that the toxins and breed of spider from the planet Gaia was capable of eliminating the antigen. Thus, the Legends went on a mission to recover them. This story, which began in Season 9, was a continuation of both the ongoing storylines in Apex and the introduction to a few new ones, including the addition of Valkyrie, development of caustic and crypto, and also a love triangle that is about as one-sided as a love triangle could be. But what it also is a story that evolved alongside the map it accompanied. It had a direct influence on the map itself, and that's something I never really got to touch on before when discussing the other maps. Apex Legends maps often have deep stories embedded into them, all of their major locations having some purpose to the greater narrative. But while you may know of some of it, you probably don't notice how much those stories coincide with the changes in the game. In fact, one season before this story began, we had the terrorist attack on Fuse's debut into the Apex games on Kings Canyon, which introduced to us the villainous Mad Maggie as she was hunted throughout Season 8. More on her later. But it also introduced to us the brand new additions to Kings Canyon's map. Side note, maybe the Apex games should stop opening these maps up to the public. It's never gone well. What's a bit disappointing for me is that if you don't go out of your way to find these stories, you probably would have no idea what this ship was or why these vines are here. The comic that coincided with this story isn't in the game anymore, and you have to go deep into wikis and fandoms to find them. So this second story to me is not just a fun anecdote about the changes to Olympus, but a clear sign that Respawn should add an archive of their comics and stories for players to see. Seriously, print a book with all the in-game comics together. I'll pay money for that. By the way, in case you never found the way to open the bridge on the Icarus, you can find the key card to open the door on one of the crew members' bodies inside the ship. Just look for the glow sticks and you'll find one hanging out by the corpses. Wait, isn't this looting? Dude, that's like most of the game. Oh yeah. We're getting close to the last story of Olympus and the secret behind this skybox, but I first want to look over the few areas of the map we haven't gotten to check out yet, such as Fight Night. This cool arena is a town takeover in the theme of Pathfinder, added by the Apex games to add a bit of variety to their Bloodsport action. One cool thing you can find in this POI is a book by the name of Pathfinder's Quest, which is a real book about Pathfinder's search for his creator. On the outside too, you can find the statue made to commemorate the scientist behind the Branthium story we talked about at the start, with Pathfinder prominently portrayed as well as all the scientists that took part in it. You may find some familiar names in that list too. This whole area is pretty neat. Sad we don't see any actual boxing matches here. No, we've done this bit before. It won't be funny. Oh, hey, speaking of map additions, the Tridents were first added to Apex with the release of Olympus in Season 7. And while we can see the city was clearly built with Tridents in mind, the Tridents that we use in-game are actually not the ones the citizens used when people lived here. These Tridents are modified versions created by Rampart. According to this Season 7 transition, as part of a settlement with Hammond Robotics, Rampart modified the Tridents on Olympus to be used as part of the Apex games. I'm not too sure what the modifications she did were, but my best guess would be the boosters and the side saddles used on the vehicles. But having a car to go around in will let us check out the last part we are going to cover. I can't reach the pedals. Thanks, mate! So now we reach the latest additions onto Olympus. The phase driver was added to Olympus as a precautionary measure by the Apex games, to make it possible to relocate the city in the case of an emergency. Its systems tap directly into the phase runner, and borrow its technology to create a portal that could envelop the entire map. But as you can tell just by looking at it, it's a little shoddy. This looks more fitting to be in an inventor's workshop, not among the pristine fields of South Olympus. In fact, it doesn't even look finished. Seriously, why can anyone just walk up and use it? Are there no safety precautions on this thing? No, there isn't. And because of that, we can finally talk about story number 3, and the secret behind this skybox. It wasn't supposed to be here. See, at the start of Season 12, Mad Maggie was dropped into the Apex games after being captured for her crimes of terrorism against the Syndicate. As she competed in the Bloodsport for the first time, she discovered a Syndicate leader by the name of Eduardo Silva, using the controls for the phase driver. Silva, in a bid to gain control over the Syndicate, planned to crash land Olympus into the grounded city of Malta by teleporting it over the city. This act of terrorism would be pinned on the convicted terrorist Mad Maggie, and showcase the Syndicate's failure to properly punish a dangerous criminal, giving Eduardo Silva the chance to gather more influence in the Syndicate in his quest to control the Outlands. Silva's plan would have worked if not for that good old Olympus automation kicking in to keep the city afloat, but the damage done by the phase shift left many objects and parts of the city trapped between dimensions, leaving all of these glowy bits for us to play around. Yeah, I don't think those are supposed to be there, or that, or this, or even that. This skybox I am so fond of wasn't here to begin with. This is what Olympus's skybox looked like. And when I show you this skybox compared to the one I showed you at the start, you can really see how the map has grown over time. If you had only started playing Apex after Season 12, you would have never seen this skybox. And that little secret fascinates me. A lot of games do update their maps as time passes, but Apex has stayed committed to bringing any changes to the Apex games into the greater narrative. That viral outbreak we talked about earlier, that was Silva's scheme too, and an update to Stormpoint and Revenant showed the end of that story. So this skybox shows us not just a beautiful cityscape we are flying above, but also a development of a story you may not personally know, but feel the impact of each and every time you play. And I find that pretty cool. Now, that's all I have to share for today. If I missed something interesting, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I'm gonna sit here and relax.